Hello English learners, and welcome to another episode of English Lessons with Grammar Man. Coming to you from Progressive English, the language school in Zurich, Switzerland. Now today we are talking about comma rules. Commas in English are super important, especially if you engage in business correspondence. This is because the humble comma can completely change the meaning of a sentence. It really is unbelievable how much power a little comma in the English language yields. For an excellent example of this, I suggest you all watch my video Comma Rules 1 and Introduction before watching this video, because it will make this video much clearer, especially if you're not familiar with some of the grammatical terminology. Now I'm going to cover all the main comma rules in this video so that by the end of it you should feel confident that you have all the information to use commas to a very high standard. At the end of the video I will give you details of how you can download a valuable free resource that I give to all my business English students, and that is a cheat sheet of all the main comma rules condensed onto one A4 sheet. This is a powerful learning tool for anyone who wants to improve their punctuation, and is especially important for people that engage in regular business correspondence. Okay, so let's dive in. We will start simple and then progress from there. Rule number 1. Use commas to separate words and word groups in a simple series of 3 or more items. An example, I went to the shop and bought some chips, comma, a chocolate bar, comma, some milk and a bottle of water. An interesting point, when the last comma in a series comes before and, it is known as the Oxford comma. So if I put a comma after milk, this would be called the Oxford comma. Now the Oxford comma is optional, but the important thing is to be consistent when you write. Either use it all the time or never use it. If you are sitting a Cambridge exam though, according to page 177 of the FCE official study book, you shouldn't use the Oxford comma. However, omission of the Oxford comma can sometimes lead to misunderstandings. For example, I want to thank my parents, John and Sarah. Here, my parents' names are John and Sarah. I'm thanking 2 people, both of my parents. But what about this sentence? I want to thank my parents, John and Sarah. Here I'm thanking 4 people, both of my parents and a man called John and a lady called Sarah. So yeah, this is obviously something to be aware of. In this case you would have to use the Oxford comma for clarity. Okay, rule number 2. Use a comma to separate 2 adjectives when the order of the adjectives can be changed. An example, it is a small, cute dog. We could change the order of the adjectives and say it is a cute small dog, so we must use a comma. In contrast, if we said I have a small red car, we wouldn't use a comma. The reason is because we wouldn't say I have a red small car. We can't change the order of the adjectives, so we do not use a comma. Another way to check this is to ask yourself if you could put the word and in between the adjectives. If you can, then we use a comma. It is a small and cute dog. It makes sense, so we use a comma. On the other hand, we wouldn't say I have a small and red car, so we do not use the comma. Alrighty, rule number 3. When starting a sentence with a dependent clause, use a comma after it. An example, unless you come to the party, comma, I'm not going. The word unless is a subordinate conjunction and makes the first clause dependent, so we need a comma. Conversely, we don't need a comma if the independent clause comes first. I'm not going to the party unless you come with me. This is the same reason that when we use our conditionals, we have a comma when the if clause comes first, because the word if makes the clause dependent. If I won lotto, I would retire. And I would retire if I won lotto, no comma. An exception would be rule number 4. When we show a very strong contrast, we can use a comma, even if the main clause comes first. For example, she was very upset, even though she won the race. Rule number 5. Use a comma after introductory phrases. An introductory phrase is just like a dependent clause, but it doesn't have its own subject. It relies on the subject and the verb in the main clause. Common introductory phrases begin with a preposition, a present participle, or a past participle. After driving all day, comma, we finally arrived at the hotel. Having left the map at home, we unfortunately got lost. And starting with a past participle, built in 1989, the Eiffel Tower is now a symbol of Paris. Okay, so moving on to rule number 6. Use commas after introductory words. Introductory words come before a main clause, and they comment on the meaning of the sentence. If they were omitted, the sentence still means the same thing. Common examples are generally, however, meanwhile, furthermore, suddenly, yes, no, and well. Generally, comma, people in my country start driving when they are 17. Another one, however, he didn't tell his wife what time he would be home. In these sentences, if you omitted the introductory word, the sentence would still be a complete thought. So you can separate the introductory word with a comma. Okay, moving on to rule number 7. Never join two main clauses with a comma. This is called a comma splice and is grammatically incorrect. I explain this in a lot more detail in comma rules and introduction, but to give you an example, you cannot write, John bought a new car. We went on a road trip. Separated by a comma, this is grammatically incorrect. Now, there are many ways to make this sentence correct, and one option is to add a fanboys. The technical term is a coordinating conjunction. For and nor, but or yet, and so. John bought a new car, so we went on a road trip. Okay, we've added a fanboys there, a coordinating conjunction, which makes that sentence now grammatically correct. So the key rule, do not join two independent clauses with a comma. Rule number 8, when using a coordinating conjunction, then we put a comma before the fanboy when it is used to join two main clauses. An example, he was very hungry, comma, and the waiter was taking a long time bringing the food. Now, an important point to be aware of when using coordinating conjunctions or fanboys is that we do not use a comma when both clauses have the same subject. For example, if we wrote, he was very hungry and he ate all the chocolate cake, then no comma, because even though we have two main clauses, the subject is the same. This is called a compound predicate. The same subject is doing two actions, and so we do not separate with a comma. Alrighty, we're getting through them. Rule number 9. Always separate non-essential information in a sentence using commas. This is an important one. So an example, my friend Michael, comma, who is such a nice guy, helped me to move the table. If we covered up the relative clause, which is just a clause that starts with who, whose, whom, where, when, why, which, or that, then the sentence still makes perfect sense. This clause is not essential to the meaning, it is additional information, and therefore requires that we separate it from the rest of the sentence using commas. This is referred to as a non-defining relative clause. We could say, my friend Michael helped me to move the table, and the sentence still makes sense. So the key message there is separate extra information not essential to the meaning of the sentence with commas. Now, we don't use commas when the relative clause is giving us essential information. For example, I like the woman who lives next door. If I didn't say lives next door, then you would be left wondering, what woman? What are you talking about, grammar man? What woman? Okay? This is called a defining relative clause. It's not just relative clauses that have this structure, but the key message, as I said, is use commas to separate non-essential information. Okay, I can demonstrate with the brother example. My brother, John, is very tall. In this example, we only have one brother, and his name is John. Therefore, knowing that my brother's name is John is not essential to the meaning of the sentence. It is additional information, so we use the commas. Now, in contrast, let's say that we have 3 brothers. Then I could write, my brother John is very tall, because now the word John is not extra information, it is very important. It is essential to knowing which brother is very tall. Maybe I have another brother who is very little. Okay? Moving on to rule number 10. Commas after question tags. Now, a question tag is just a phrase or a single word which is added to a statement to turn it into a question. And a question tag needs a comma before it. For example, it's so hot today, isn't it? You're going to the concert tonight, aren't you? Okay, with emails, rule number 11. Use a comma after your greeting. The technical term is your salutation. If it is a very formal email, you use a colon, Dear John, colon. And if it is semi-formal or informal, use a comma, Dear John, comma. Okay, also use a comma after your sign-off in an email. Best regards, comma, with many thanks, comma, yours sincerely, comma, etc., etc. And almost there, rule number 12, with dates and times. There are so many options, but the key is to be consistent. Choose a style and use that every time. There are some differences between British and American styles, but this is how I write dates and times, and it's grammatically correct. With day, month and year, no comma. I look forward to our meeting on the 1st of May 2018. Day, month, year format, it's the British system, no comma. We could also write, I look forward to our meeting on the 1st of May 2018, with no comma. When you include the day and the time, use commas for clarity. I look forward to our meeting on Monday, the 23rd of May at 2 p.m. Now, can you also write, I look forward to our meeting on Monday, May 23rd at 2 p.m. Yes, you can. This is the American system and both are fine. Now, that is all of the main rules, the general main rules. We can go a bit deeper, but I think that's enough for today. If you adhere to those rules, you will have excellent punctuation with your commas. The most common mistakes I see are with introductory words, introductory phrases, and dependent clauses. Remember to put a comma between these introductory elements and the main clause, and if you remember to do that, and separate non-essential information from the rest of the sentence using commas, you will have excellent punctuation. Now, it's been a long and a little bit technical lesson, but if you remember back at the start of the lesson, I promised you a cheat sheet to help you with your commas. What I'll do is I'll give you a cheat sheet on commas. I'll put it on the website under learning material. So it's very handy for people especially engaged in business correspondence on a regular basis. So yeah, make sure you check that out by clicking on the website below. Okay, that's about it everybody. Thank you very much for watching, and I wish you all the very best of luck with your English goals and life goals. Cheers.